Yeah, could this guy in the middle, could he cease to be here in the middle?
Not if he was put there. I mean, he was put there by someone.
What if I did this?
Yeah.
He ceased to exist. Could this one cease to exist?
Yeah, because the creator. I mean,
Could this one cease to exist? Yes. Now let me ask you the question. For them to be here, could the artist cease to exist? No. For them to be here, the artist had to exist. The technical terms for this is that they exist contingently. We've used that word a couple times. The artist, the divine, exists necessarily. They exist by necessity. And this is what the doctrine of divine aseity means. Aseity is a Latin word that means from self. This does not mean, however, that God created himself. Because in order to create yourself, you would have had to exist before the creating of yourself. You understand the problem? So we say that God did not create himself, rather God is uncreated. God is ase. He is self-sufficient from self. He is uncreated. He exists necessarily, in the same way that the artist necessarily existed. These all here exist contingently, based upon the one that put them there. So, Althea, could you have not existed? You could have not existed. In fact, there was a time where you did not exist. Even in this world now, you could cease to exist. All of us can say this. All of us do not exist from self. All of us exist contingent and dependent on something else. God is not like this. God is not dependent on anything or anyone else. He... that may again be a doctrine of sovereignty that we might need to look into, but divine aseity says that God, he didn't need anyone to come from anywhere. He is not contingent on anyone. Yes, exactly. This is the orthodox understanding of the nature of God. When you think of God, when you understand who he is, you must confess that he is from self. What if he's not? This often, excuse me, is a problem when you look at Greek mythology. You have gods in the Roman pantheon and the Greek mythology creating other gods, right? And so even the gods themselves come from something else. When we understand the Christian God, the one true God, he comes from no one. He comes from nothing. He is not dependent on anyone or anything. He exists uncreated. We tracking? You have a question? Go ahead. However, the Muslim God, I believe they also would say that the Muslim God is Ase. The Muslim God is not terribly different from the Judaism God, the God of Judaism, which is, understand, different than the God of Orthodox Christianity. Before Christianity existed, the God of Judaism is the God of Christianity. But today, the God the Jews worship is not a God in Trinity. It's not a Trinitarian God. But it is a God that exists ase. Islam Muslims, they believe that Allah exists ase, no, uncreated. No, they have other problems. We can get into some other problems of their concept of God. Let me see if there's any on here. In this one is a problem for them. Next one we're going to get to. Rose, you had a question? You're scared to ask? Come on, now's your chance. I'd like to hear it. We'll say God. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You want to know what we were put here to do? Why humans? Why all of this? The reason we exist, and this will come up in anthropology next class, but the reason that we exist is to rightly reveal God to all of creation. That's the reason you and I exist. To rightly reveal God. When he put Adam and Eve in the garden, that was their job. It was to manage, and it was to, as if God himself were there, they were to be the ambassadors that spoke on behalf of God, that did the things that God would do as if God himself were there. They were God's representative.
And then because he gave us free will.
We don't have time to get into free will. We will talk about that next class, though. All right, any other questions on divine aseity, infinity? When you asked the question about before creation, what did it look like? That's before space and time. So if you were to think of God creating this space in which people live, this area, before, it's not that this is void and that God is somehow inside the box. God is completely outside the box. He is unrestricted by the box. There is no time, there is no space, there is no limitation placed upon his being. It's not that there was a time that he was alone. It wasn't that there was a time where he was without. It's that there isn't time. He exists outside of time. What do you mean when you say worlds? You mean like planets and stars?
Like the moon and all of them things?
You feel that our solar system is the only solar system and where life exists? Mars and Jupiter?
No, there's life on
Yeah.
Mars.
Absolutely.
You can find water on the moon and on
Okay, hold on a second.
where's water, there's
This
life.